The transport ship dropped out of hyperspace with a soft hum, and Danny Cole got his first look at 7. The station hung in the darkness of space like a massive wheel, spinning slowly against a backdrop of distant stars. Lights blinked along its surface. Ships moved around it like tiny insects. It was the biggest thing Danny had ever seen built by living creatures. He pressed his hand against the cold window of the transport and watched as they moved closer. Somewhere on that station, soldiers from dozens of alien species were training to become the best warriors in the galaxy. And now, for the first time in history, a human was going to join them. Danny was 24 years old. He had grown up in a small town in Colorado, surrounded by mountains and forests. He had joined the army at 18 and made it through ranger training by the time he was 21. He had served in places he was not allowed to talk about and done things he tried not to think about. When the Galactic Coalition had asked for a human volunteer to attend their military academy, Danny had raised his hand without a second thought. He was not the human, he was not the strongest, but he was steady. He did not quit, and right now that was what humanity needed. The transport docked with a gentle bump. Danny grabbed his duffel bag and walked toward the exit. The doors slid open, and he stepped onto the station for the first time. The air smelled strange. It was clean, almost too clean, with a faint hint of something metallic. The gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth, which made Danny feel like he was walking on a soft mattress. The corridor ahead of him was wide and curved, following the shape of the station. Aliens of all kinds walked past him, some tall and thin, others short and wide, some covered in scales or feathers or hard shells. Nobody looked at him. He was just another new arrival, another body in the crowd. Danny followed the signs toward the orientation center. His translator implant, a tiny device installed behind his ear before he left Earth, fed him the meaning of the alien symbols. He found the right door and stepped inside. The room was simple. Metal walls, a few chairs, a desk. Behind the desk sat a creature that made Danny stop in his tracks. It was an insect, a giant insect at least 7 feet tall, with 6 limbs and a hard black shell. Its head was triangular, with 6 red eyes arranged in 2 rows. Thin antennae twitched on top of its skull. It wore a uniform of dark blue fabric stretched tight across its armored body. "You are the human," the creature said. Its voice was sharp and clicking, but the translator made the words clear. "Yes, sir," Danny said. He walked forward and stood at attention. "Cadet Danny Cole reporting for training." The insect studied him with all 6 eyes. Danny could not read its expression. He did not even know if it had expressions. "I am instructor," the creature said. I have trained soldiers at this academy for 37 cycles. I have seen cadets from 46 species pass through these halls. Some became great warriors, most did not." Stood up, he was even taller than Danny had realized, towering over the human by at least 2 feet. His shell gleamed under the lights. "I have read the reports about your species," continued. "Your world is classified as a Category 7 death world. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, dangerous predators, toxic atmosphere for most species." He paused. "And yet, looking at you, I see nothing impressive. No claws, no armor, no venom. Your skin is soft. Your bones are brittle. You have no natural weapons." Danny said nothing. He had heard this before. Every alien who looked at humans saw the same thing, a weak, fragile species that had somehow survived on a planet that should have killed them. "I do not know why the Coalition accepted your species into the exchange program," said. "Perhaps they believe you have hidden strengths. Perhaps they simply wanted to study you. But I will tell you this, human. My training does not care about politics. It does not care about diplomacy. It only cares about results." Walked around the desk and stood directly in front of Danny. The human had to tilt his head back to meet the alien's eyes. "You will be placed with the other cadets," said. "You will train with them, eat with them, sleep with them. You will be given no special treatment. You will be expected to meet the same standards as everyone else. If you fail, you will be sent home. If you succeed, you will have proven that your species deserves its place among us." "I understand, sir," Danny said. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Do you, I wonder? The training begins tomorrow at first light cycle. I suggest you rest. Many cadets do not survive the first week." Danny smiled. It was a small smile, just a slight curve of his lips. "Looking forward to it, sir." Stared at him for a long moment. Something flickered in those red eyes, something that Danny could not identify. Then the instructor turned away. "Your quarters are on level 4, section 12. Your uniform and equipment will be delivered tonight. Report to training hall 7 at 0600. "Yes, sir." Danny picked up his duffel bag and walked toward the door. He could feel eyes on his back, watching him go. The corridor outside was busy with cadets moving in all directions. Danny saw creatures of every shape and size. A group of tall, lizard-like beings with green scales walked past, talking in hissing voices. A small, furry creature with large ears along the wall, clutching a tablet in its tiny hands. Two massive beings that looked like walking boulders lumbered down the center of the hallway, making the floor shake with each step. Danny found his quarters on level 4. The room was small but clean, with a bed, a desk, and a storage locker. The window looked out at the stars. He dropped his bag on the bed and sat down. For a moment, he just looked out at the darkness of space, thinking about how far he was from home. Then he started unpacking. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. He did not know if he would survive the training or fail on the first day. He did not know if the other cadets would accept him or treat him like an outsider. But he knew one thing. He was not going to quit. Danny had been through hard things before. He had marched through deserts with 100 pounds on his back. He had stayed awake for days during training exercises. He had been cold, hungry, exhausted, and scared. And every time he had kept moving. Every time he had taken one more step. That was what humans did. They kept going. Danny finished unpacking and lay down on the bed. The mattress was too firm and the pillow was the wrong shape, but he did not care. He closed his eyes and let himself drift toward sleep. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. And Danny Cole was ready. The alarm woke Danny at 5 in the morning. He was on his feet before his eyes were fully open, old habits from years of military training taking over. He washed his face, put on his new uniform, and ate the ration bar that had been left on his desk. It tasted like cardboard mixed with chalk, but it had calories, and that was what mattered. Training Hall 7 was a massive dome at the center of the station. When Danny arrived, he found over 100 cadets already waiting. They stood in loose groups, talking quietly among themselves. Most of them were larger than Danny. Some had claws or fangs or armored plates covering their bodies. A few floated in the air on wings that hummed like engines. Danny found an empty spot near the back and waited. At exactly 6 o'clock, instructor walked into the hall. Behind him came 5 other instructors, each from a different species. They spread out along the front of the room, their eyes scanning the crowd of cadets. "Today," announced, his voice echoing through the hall, "you begin the crucible of endurance. This is the first and most important test of your training. Many of you will fail, some of you will break, a few of you will surprise us." His 6 eyes swept across the room. "The crucible lasts 40 hours. You will march through a simulated combat environment. You will face extreme temperatures, variable gravity, and psychological stress. You will not sleep. You will receive minimal rations. You will keep moving until you cannot move anymore." A ripple of tension passed through the cadets. Danny heard nervous whispers in languages he did not understand. "If you collapse, you will be removed from the exercise," continued. "If you quit, you will be removed from the academy. There is no shame in failure, but there is no second chance either." He paused. "The crucible begins now." The floor beneath them hummed, and suddenly the training hall was gone. Danny found himself standing on rocky ground under a pale orange sky. Mountains rose in the distance. The air was hot and dry, like the inside of an oven. All around him, cadets stumbled as they adjusted to the sudden change. It was a simulation, Danny realized. The entire hall had been transformed into a virtual battlefield. "Move," a voice commanded from somewhere above them. "North, 20 kilometers before the first checkpoint." The cadets began to walk. The first few hours were not too bad. The heat was uncomfortable but manageable. The rocky terrain was rough but not impossible. Danny fell into an easy rhythm, placing one foot in front of the other, conserving his energy. He watched the other cadets as they moved. The species of tall reptilian warriors seemed to handle the conditions well at first. They had scales that protected them from the sun and strong legs that carried them over the rocks. The four-legged creatures that looked like a cross between horses and spiders moved quickly but seemed to tire fast. The small beings with oversized heads and thin bodies struggled with the physical demands from the start. By hour 5, the temperature dropped. It went from burning hot to freezing cold in less than 30 minutes. Danny zipped up his uniform and kept moving. Some of the cadets were not so lucky. They who had thrived in the heat began to slow down. Their cold blood made them sluggish in low temperatures. Danny saw one of them stumble and fall, his body shaking uncontrollably. Medics appeared from nowhere and carried the away, one down. By hour 10, the gravity shifted. It went from slightly lighter than Earth standard to significantly heavier. Danny felt like someone had dropped a weight on his shoulders. Every step became harder. Every breath became a struggle. But he kept moving. He had trained for this. Not this exact situation, of course, but situations like it. In Ranger School, they had made him march for miles with a heavy pack on his back. They had kept him awake for days. They had pushed him until he thought he could not take another step, and then they had pushed him some more. Danny knew how to suffer. He knew how to put the pain in a box in his mind and keep going anyway. By hour 12, the cadets were dropping fast. The first collapsed, her 4 legs giving out beneath her. A sat down and refused to get up, his mind broken by the stress. 2 more fell to the cold. A winged creature crashed to the ground when the gravity became too strong for his wings. Danny walked past them all. He did not look back. There was nothing he could do for them. At the first checkpoint, they received a small ration pack and a cup of water. Danny ate quickly, drank slowly, and started moving again before most of the other cadets had finished resting. By hour 20, the heat had returned. The simulation threw sandstorms at them, winds that carried tiny particles of rock that stung exposed skin. Danny wrapped his face with a piece of cloth torn from his uniform and pushed forward. More cadets fell. A creature made of living crystal shattered when the temperature changes became too extreme. A being that looked like a walking octopus collapsed from dehydration, its body too inefficient at retaining water. They were almost completely gone, their brilliant minds useless against the simple brutality of the physical challenge. Danny checked his count. They had started with over 100 cadets. By hour 25, fewer than 30 remained standing. The simulation changed again. Now they were climbing a mountain in the dark, the only light coming from distant stars. The air was thin. The rocks were slippery with ice. Danny's fingers went numb. His legs burned with every step. But he kept climbing. Somewhere ahead of him, he heard a named X talking to himself in his own language. The translator picked up some of it. He was cursing the mountain, the cold, the instructors, and every human who had ever lived. Danny almost smiled. By hour 30, the mountain was behind them. They were back on flat ground, but now the gravity was fluctuating randomly. One moment it was light, the next it was crushing. Cadets who could not adapt fell where they stood. Danny watched a cadet, a female with bright red shell markings, stumble and fall. Without thinking, he walked over and helped her up. "Can you walk?" he asked. She looked at him with 4 of her 6 eyes. Yes, I can walk. Then walk, stay with me. They moved together for the next few hours. Danny kept the pace steady, not too fast, not too slow. He shared his water with her when she ran out. He talked to her when the psychological stress began to take hold, simple words about nothing important, just sounds to keep her mind focused. By hour 36, even she could not continue. Her legs gave out and she collapsed into the dust. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I cannot." "You did good," Danny said. "You made it further than most." The medics came and took her away. Danny stood alone in the empty simulation. He looked around. The other survivors were scattered across the landscape, most of them barely moving. Some were crawling. Some had stopped and were just standing in place, swaying on their feet. Danny kept walking. He was tired. His muscles ached. His feet were covered in blisters. He had not slept in over 30 hours. But he had felt worse, and he was still standing. The crucible was not over yet. The command center was quiet. 12 instructors sat at their stations, watching the monitors that showed every corner of the simulated battlefield. For 37 hours they had watched cadets push themselves to their limits and beyond. They had seen warriors from proud species collapse. They had seen brilliant minds break under pressure. They had seen bodies give out, one after another, until only a handful remained. And through it all, they had watched the human. Instructor stood at the main display, his 6 eyes fixed on the small figure walking across the rocky terrain. The human moved slowly but steadily, his pace unchanged from hour 1. His vital signs were elevated but stable. His body temperature was normal. His brain activity showed stress but not panic. "How is this possible?" asked Lieutenant Commander. She was covered in silver feathers that lay flat against her body in a display of confusion. "His species has no physical advantages. No armor, no claws, no enhanced strength. He should have fallen hours ago." "The lasted longer in the heat," another instructor noted. "The solved the psychological puzzles faster. They have superior night vision. And yet the human is still standing while all of them have fallen." Said nothing. He was watching the monitors, studying every detail of the human's movement. There was something strange about the way the creature walked. It was not the movement of someone pushing through pain. It was the movement of someone who had accepted pain as a constant companion. "He is not fighting the conditions," said slowly. "He is adapting to them. When the heat came, he slowed down and conserved energy. When the cold came, he kept moving to generate warmth. When the gravity increased, he shortened his steps. He does not try to overcome the obstacles, he simply endures them." The instructors exchanged looks. This was not normal. This was not how soldiers were supposed to behave. Soldiers were supposed to fight, to struggle, to push back against adversity. They were not supposed to simply absorb it and keep walking. On the monitor, the human stopped to help a fallen cadet. It was the female with the red markings. She had collapsed again, her body finally giving out completely. The human said something to her that the audio sensors picked up. "You did good. You made it further than most." Then he turned and kept walking. He helped 17 cadets during the exercise, one of the instructors reported. He shared his rations with 4 of them. He gave his water to 3. He carried a cadet for almost 2 kilometers before the cadet asked to be put down. "Why?" asked. "Why would he waste his energy on others?" "Thought about this?" "Perhaps," he said, "because he did not see it as a waste." Hour 38 passed, then hour 39. The last non-human cadet fell at hour 39 and 12 minutes. He was unnamed, one of the few who had lasted this long through sheer willpower. His mind had held on longer than his body, but eventually even he could not continue. He collapsed in the middle of a flat plain, his eyes rolling back in his head. The medics came and took him away. And then there was only the human. Danny Cole stood alone in the simulated landscape. The orange sky above him flickered slightly, the simulation struggling to maintain itself for a single remaining participant. The wind had stopped. The temperature had stabilized. There were no more obstacles, no more challenges. There was just empty ground stretching in every direction. Danny looked around. For a moment, he seemed confused. He had been walking for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to stop. His legs wanted to keep moving. His body had found a rhythm that was hard to break. He stood there for almost a full minute just breathing. Then he looked up at the sky, where he knew the observation drones were watching. "So," he said, his voice calm and steady, "when does the real test start?" In the command center, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Felt something cold move through his body. It was a sensation he had not experienced in decades of training soldiers. It took him a moment to identify it. Fear. The human was not joking. The human was not trying to be impressive or arrogant. The human was genuinely asking when the actual challenge would begin. He had just completed 40 hours of the most grueling physical and psychological training the Academy had ever designed, and he was standing there asking for more. "End the simulation," said quietly. The orange sky faded. The rocks and dust disappeared. The training hall returned, its metal walls and bright lights replacing the harsh wilderness. Danny blinked as his eyes adjusted, then looked around at the empty space where 100 cadets had stood just hours before. He was alone. The doors at the far end of the hall opened. An instructor walked in. His footsteps echoed in the silence. He stopped a few feet from the human and looked down at him with all 6 eyes. "You completed the crucible," said. "You are the only cadet to do so." Danny nodded slowly. "The others?" "They will recover. Most of them will return to training after a rest period. A few will be sent home." Paused. "You helped many of them during the exercise. That was not required." "No, sir, but it was right." Studied the human. Up close, he could see the signs of exhaustion. The dark circles under his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands, the way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other to ease the pain in his muscles. The human was tired, the human was hurting, but the human was still standing. "Your species," said, "is very strange." Danny almost smiled. "I've heard that before, sir. I have trained soldiers for 37 cycles. I have seen warriors from the proudest species in the galaxy. I have seen who could tear enemies apart with their bare claws. I have seen who could calculate battle strategies faster than any computer. I have seen who could survive in the vacuum of space for hours." Leaned closer. "But I have never seen anything like you." "I'm not special, sir," Danny said. "I'm just a human. This is what we do." "What you do," repeated. "And what exactly is that?" Danny was quiet for a moment. He looked down at his hands, at the blisters and the dirt and the small cuts that covered his skin. Then he looked back up at the instructor. "We don't stop," he said. "That's it. That's all we do. When something hurts, we keep going. When something's hard, we keep going. When something seems impossible, we keep going. We might fall down. We might slow down, but we don't stop. Not ever. Not until we're dead." Was silent for a long moment. "I believe," he said finally, "that I owe your species an apology. I underestimated you." "No apology needed, sir." "Nevertheless, I give it, and I give you something else." Straightened up and raised his right hand in what Danny recognized as a salute. "You have earned my respect, Cadet Cole. Not many can say that." Danny returned the salute as best he could. "Thank you, sir." Lowered his hand. "Now go and rest. Tomorrow the real training begins." Danny smiled. For the first time since he arrived at the station, it was a full smile, one that reached his eyes. "Looking forward to it, sir." He picked up his pack and walked toward the doors. Behind him, watched him go, wondering what other surprises the human race had in store. He had a feeling he was going to find out. The meeting room was on the highest level of the academy, reserved for senior staff and important discussions. 12 instructors sat around a circular table, each one representing a different species. They had gathered here many times before to discuss training programs and cadet performance, but this meeting was different. This meeting was about the human. A holographic display floated above the center of the table, showing Danny Cole's biological profile, heart rate, brain activity, muscle density, bone structure, blood composition. Every detail of his body was laid out for the instructors to study. "Let us begin," said Admiral X, the oldest instructor and the commander of the academy. He was a massive, his green scales faded with age but his eyes still sharp. "Instructor, please present your findings." Stood and walked to the display. He touched a control, and the hologram zoomed in on the human skeletal system. "Humans have an internal skeleton made of calcium phosphate," he said. "It is lighter than chitin but surprisingly strong. More importantly, it can repair itself. When a human bone breaks, the body generates new bone tissue to fix the damage. Within weeks, the bone is whole again." The instructors murmured among themselves. Self-repairing bones were rare in the galaxy. Most species that suffered broken bones either died or lived with the injury forever. Touched another control. The display shifted to show the human's muscular system. Human muscles are made of two types of fibers. One type is designed for short bursts of power. The other type is designed for extended periods of activity. He highlighted the second type. These are called slotwich fibers. They are extremely resistant to fatigue. A human can maintain physical activity for hours, even days, without their muscles giving out completely. "That explains how he lasted the full 40 hours, said. Her feathers were raised in what Danny would have recognized as shock. But it does not explain why he seemed almost comfortable. "I was coming to that, said. He pulled up a new set of data. Humans evolved on a death world. Their planet has extreme temperature variations, dangerous wildlife, natural disasters, and a gravity of one standard unit. By comparison, most of our have gravity between 0.6 and 0.8. They live in higher gravity than the training simulation," Admiral X said slowly. "The fluctuations we used would have felt normal to him." "Correct, and there is more," highlighted a section of the human brain. "Humans have a highly developed pain response, but unlike most species, their pain does not automatically shut down their bodies. Instead, it serves as an information system. It tells them something is wrong, but it does not stop them from functioning." One of the instructors, a small creature with large black eyes, raised a thin hand. "Are you saying that humans can simply ignore pain?" "Not ignore. Manage. They have the ability to suppress their pain response through conscious effort. They can push through injuries that would immobilize other species, and they can do it for extended periods of time." The room was silent. Pulled up one final piece of data. It was a historical record from Earth, translated into the common galactic language. "On there," he said, "humans participate in something called a marathon. It is a race that covers 42 kilometers. They run this distance voluntarily for entertainment." He paused to let that sink in. "They also have something called an ultramarathon. That covers 160 kilometers, through deserts, through mountains. Some humans complete it in less than 24 hours. Admiral X made a sound that his translator rendered as disbelief. "They run 160 kilometers for entertainment." "Yes, Admiral." The doors to the meeting room opened, and a human woman walked in. She was tall and thin, with short brown hair and intelligent green eyes. She wore a coalition liaison uniform with a name tag that read Marsh. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said. "I heard you were discussing the human cadet's performance. I thought I might be able to provide some context." "Please," Admiral X said, gesturing to an empty seat. "We would appreciate any information you can give us." Sat down and looked at the holographic display. She smiled slightly when she saw the marathon data. I see you found our running records, she said. Yes, those are real. Humans have been running long distances for hundreds of thousands of years. It was how we hunted on our. Hunted asked. I do not understand. Humans have no claws, no fangs, no venom. How could you hunt anything? We did not need any of those things, said. We had something better, we had endurance. She leaned forward. On Earth, most prey animals are faster than humans. They can outrun us in a short sprint, but they cannot run for long distances. Their bodies overheat. They have to stop and rest. Humans do not. We have sweat glands all over our bodies that keep us cool. We can run for hours without overheating. She stood and walked to the display. Our ancestors would chase an animal until it collapsed from exhaustion. It might take hours, it might take days, but eventually the prey would stop, and then we would catch it. We call this persistence hunting. The instructors looked at each other. Something was changing in the room. The mild curiosity they had felt about the human was transforming into something else, something that looked a lot like fear. You are saying, Admiral X said slowly, that humans evolved to chase prey until it dies of exhaustion. Yes, said simply. That is exactly what I am saying. We are persistence predators. We do not catch our prey by being faster or stronger. We catch it by being more stubborn. We catch it by refusing to stop. She walked back to her seat and sat down. Your crucible of endurance was designed to break soldiers from 46 different species. It was the hardest training program in the galaxy. And to Danny Cole, it was basically a long camping trip with some bad weather. Nobody spoke. Humans are not special because of what we can do, continued. We are not the strongest or the fastest or the... We are special because of what we refuse to stop doing. Give a human a task and they will work on it until it is done or until they are dead. That is not a figure of speech. That is a biological fact. Finally broke the silence. I owe your species an apology, he said. When the human arrived, I looked at him and saw weakness. I saw a soft body and fragile bones. I did not see what was truly dangerous about him. What was that? Asked. 6 eyes focused on her. I did not see that he would never stop coming. No matter what we threw at him, no matter how hard we pushed, he would never ever stop. Smiled. It was a small smile, but there was something proud in it. Now you understand, she said. Now you understand what it means to be human. Admiral X stood. His massive body cast a shadow over the table. I believe, he said, that we need to redesign our training programs. If humans can complete the crucible without significant difficulty, then the crucible is not hard enough. With respect, Admiral said, that might not be the right approach. Instead of making the training harder, perhaps you should ask why humans can endure so much. Perhaps there are lessons other species can learn from us. The old considered this. Then slowly he nodded. Perhaps you are right, he said. Perhaps the human is here to teach us, not to learn from us. He looked at the holographic display, at the strange soft creature that had completed the impossible. I think, Admiral X said, that the galaxy is about to change. 3 years had passed since Danny Cole walked off the transport ship and onto 7. 3 years of training, learning, and growing. 3 years that changed everything. Danny stood on the observation deck of the station, looking out at the stars. He was older now, with a few more scars and a few more gray hairs. His uniform was different too. Instead of cadet stripes, he wore the badges of a full instructor. The academy had asked him to stay to teach the next generation of soldiers, and he had agreed. But not forever. Danny had other plans. The door behind him opened, and a familiar clicking sound announced the arrival of instructor. The walked up and stood beside him, looking out at the same stars. You are leaving tomorrow, said. It was not a question. Yes, Danny said. It's time. There are other humans waiting for a chance to train here, and there are things I need to do back home. Was silent for a moment. Their relationship had changed over the years. What had started as suspicion had become respect, and what had become respect had slowly turned into something that looked a lot like friendship. "You have changed this academy," said. "You have changed the way we think about training, about limits, about what is possible." Danny shook his head. "I just did what I was trained to do. The cadets did the hard work." "You are too modest." Turned to face him. "Before you came, our training was designed to find the strongest, the fastest, the most talented. We believed that natural ability was the most important factor in creating a great soldier. You showed us that we were wrong." "Not wrong," Danny said, "just incomplete." "Yes, incomplete," made a sound that Danny had learned to recognize as a laugh. "You showed us that willpower matters more than natural gifts. You showed us that the soldier who refuses to quit is more valuable than the soldier who starts with advantages. You showed us what endurance really means." Danny looked back at the stars. "I'm just glad I could help." "Help," repeated the word like he was tasting it. "You did more than help, Danny Cole. You inspired. The cadets who saw you complete the crucible, who watched you keep going when everyone else had fallen, they carry that memory with them. They push themselves harder because of you. They believe in themselves because of you." "Including X." Made his laughing sound again. "Especially X." Danny smiled. The warrior had become one of his closest friends at the academy. X had been one of the first cadets to collapse during the crucible, taken down by the cold that his reptilian body could not handle. He had been ashamed, humiliated. He had wanted to quit. Danny had talked to him. He had told him that falling was not the same as failing, that getting back up was what mattered, that every great warrior in history had been knocked down at some point, and what made them great was that they kept fighting. X had listened. He had returned to training. He had pushed himself harder than ever before, and when the next crucible came, he had finished it. Not first, not easily, but he had finished it. Now X was one of the best soldiers in the Coalition fleet. "I have something for you," said. He reached into his uniform and pulled out a small object. It was a piece of metal, polished and shaped into the symbol of the academy. "This is given to instructors who have served with distinction. It is the highest honor we can offer." Danny took the medal and looked at it. "Thank you, this means a lot." "You earned it," said. "And remember, you will always have a place here, if you ever want to return." "I'll remember." They stood together in silence for a while longer, watching the stars. Then Danny turned and walked away. He had a ship to catch. 10 years later, the galaxy faced a crisis. A hostile force had emerged from the unexplored regions of space. Nobody knew who they were or what they wanted. All they knew was that these invaders were powerful, aggressive, and completely unwilling to negotiate. The Coalition assembled its fleets and sent them to defend a planet called Prime. It was a strategic position, a gateway to the inner systems. If it fell, the entire Coalition would be at risk. The battle went badly from the start. The invaders had superior numbers and superior technology. The Coalition forces were pushed back, taking heavy losses. By the end of the first day, the situation was desperate. A mixed unit of human and soldiers was assigned to hold a defensive position in the mountains. Their job was to protect a supply route that the rest of the fleet needed to survive. Intelligence estimated that they would need to hold for 72 hours until reinforcements could arrive. The unit's leader was a woman named Cross. She was 31 years old, born in Texas, and she had trained under Danny Cole at the academy. She had heard all his stories. She had learned all his lessons, and when the order came to hold the mountain, she did not hesitate. "You heard the command," she said to her soldiers. 72 hours, that's all we need to do." A sergeant named X, distant relative of X, looked at her with narrowed eyes. 72 hours against that force. With our numbers, it is impossible." Smiled. It was the same smile Danny Cole had shown instructor all those years ago. "Nothing is impossible," she said. "We just have to not quit." The fighting started an hour later. For 3 days and 3 nights the unit held the mountain. They fought without sleep. They fought without rest. They fought through injuries, through exhaustion, through conditions that should have broken them a dozen times over. They fought with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. They had learned something from the humans, something about refusing to accept limits. When their bodies told them to stop, they kept fighting. When their minds told them it was hopeless, they kept fighting. When everything seemed lost, they kept fighting. The humans fought the way they always did, one step at a time, 1 minute at a time, one breath at a time. They did not think about the 72 hours ahead. They thought about the next second, and then the second after that, and then the second after that. At hour 70, the reinforcements were still not there. Enemy forces broke through the outer defenses. Half the unit was dead or wounded. The survivors were running low on ammunition. Cross stood at the center of the line, firing her weapon until it ran empty, then picking up another one from a fallen soldier and firing that one too. Her face was covered in dirt and blood. Her voice was hoarse from shouting orders, but she was still standing. At hour 90, the situation was critical. The enemy was everywhere. The line was collapsing. It seemed like the end. And then the sky lit up. Coalition ships burst out of hyperspace, dozens of them, filling the air with fire and light. The reinforcements had arrived. 20 hours late, but they had arrived. The enemy retreated. The mountain was saved. The supply route was secure. When the first transport landed and the relief soldiers rushed out, they found Cross sitting on a rock, her weapon across her knees. She looked up at them with tired eyes and a small smile. "Took you long enough," she said. "We were just getting started." The officer in charge of the relief force stared at her. He had expected to find corpses. He had expected to find a defeated unit waiting to be rescued. Instead, he found soldiers who looked like they could fight for another week. "How?" he asked. "How did you hold for 96 hours? Thought about Danny Cole. She thought about the stories he had told her. She thought about the crucible and the human who had asked when the real test would start. "It's what we do," she said. "It's what humans do. We don't stop, not ever, not until the job is done." She stood up and looked at the sky, where the coalition ships were chasing the retreating enemy. "Come on," she said to her soldiers. "We've still got work to do." And together, humans and all the other species who had learned what endurance really meant, they walked back toward the fight. Because that was what soldiers did. They kept going.